Mara Jennings sat at the metal table, hands folded tight enough for the knuckles to whiten. The visiting room buzzed with low voices, but her focus locked on the clock above the door. Evan was late again. He was never late, not before last month. Not before the shift she still couldn't explain, not even to herself. When he finally stepped in, something in her chest faltered. He walked differently, lighter on his feet, almost nervous, like someone bracing for a question they didn't want to answer. His eyes scanned everything except her face. He smelled faintly of jasmine, a scent she never wore and never owned. "Hey," he said, sitting across from her. His voice carried a sharp edge, rushed, clipped, as if he needed the conversation to end before it even started. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah, just tired. Long week." He didn't reach for her hands. He used to. He didn't ask if she was holding up. He used to. He kept tapping the table with his thumb, barely looking up, barely staying present, like he was in two places at once and neither place wanted him. She leaned forward. "What's going on?" "Nothing. Just work, stress, you know." He knew she didn't know. He knew she had no access to his world, to his schedule, to anything outside these concrete walls. Every detail she had came through the man sitting across from her, but today he gave her pieces that didn't fit. His shirt collar was wrinkled and the top button undone. A smudge of soft pink gloss rested faintly near his jawline. Mara stared at it until the shape blurred. "Is there someone else?" she whispered. His eyes finally snapped up, wide and startled, and for a moment she thought he might fight for her, deny it, reassure her. Instead, he swallowed hard and forced a thin smile. "Mara, don't start, please." The plea, instead of calming her, twisted the unease deeper. It sounded like a man begging for silence, not understanding. The guard called, "5 minutes." Evan exhaled as if relieved. Relieved. He stood too quickly, knocking his chair into the table leg. "I'll come next month, okay? Just stay out of trouble." She watched him leave without looking back. Watched the door close behind him. Watched the clock return to its steady, indifferent rhythm. Something inside her loosened and then tightened again, like a rope pulled both ways. Her hands trembled. She dug her nails into her palms to stop the shaking. A guard approached, sliding a folded slip of paper onto the table. "This came for you. Thought you'd want it sooner than later." She picked it up with stiff fingers. The handwriting was unfamiliar, sharp strokes, hurried loops. Only one sentence sat on the center of the page, one sentence that made the room tilt. He wasn't alone last night. He was with Layla. Her cousin, her childhood shadow, the girl who copied her clothes, her friends, her dreams, and once confessed she envied Mara more than she loved her. Mara's breath broke. The slip fell from her hand to the floor, landing face up, the words staring back as if daring her to deny them. Somewhere in her chest, a quiet crack formed, thin, deep, irreversible. Mara lay on the narrow bunk, the slip of paper still burning through her thoughts. Layla's name pulsed behind her eyes like a wound refusing to close. The walls felt tighter than usual, pressing in with a weight she could no longer pretend she could carry. Lights out came too slowly. Every minute until then dragged across her nerves like a blade. When darkness finally swallowed the cell block, she still couldn't breathe right. From the bunk above, a voice drifted down. "You're shaking the whole bed." Mara didn't answer. She didn't trust her own voice. The woman leaned over the edge, her hair falling like a curtain. It was the new inmate, Sienna. Quiet, observant, too calm for someone who'd arrived only 2 weeks earlier. "I heard what happened today," Sienna murmured. "Visitors don't act like that unless they're hiding something." Mara shut her eyes. You don't know him. No, Sienna said, but I know men who look like they're trying to outrun their own choices. Mara felt her throat tighten. Someone saw him with my cousin. Sienna didn't gasp or look surprised. She simply nodded, as if betrayal was currency she'd spent many times before. That kind of wound doesn't heal in here. Mara tried to steady her breathing, but the betrayal wrapped around her ribs like a fist. Evan and Layla, together, laughing, whispering, touching. She could see it too clearly, as if her mind wanted to torture her into breaking. A sudden clang erupted down the hall. Shouts, a tray hitting the floor, two women yelling over each other, guards rushing in. Something slammed against metal. Chaos rose like a sudden storm. Sienna sat up fast. "Stay still," she warned. But Mara was already on her feet, gripping the bars. A fight in the cafeteria had spilled into the corridor. Two inmates clawed at each other while a guard tried to pull them apart. Someone screamed for backup. Mara's pulse hammered. As the chaos grew, a guard shoved both women toward the wall, hitting the alarm. Red lights flashed. Sirens howled through the block. "Everyone down! Now!" Mara froze as a wave of inmates dropped to their knees. A hand yanked her shoulder. She didn't see who. She swung instinctively. The guard slammed her to the ground. The impact rattled her teeth. "You want solitary?" he barked. "Because that's where you're headed." She didn't fight. She didn't speak. She let them drag her down the hall, her cheek burning against the cold floor. Inside the small concrete room, the door clanged shut, swallowing the world behind it. Solitary had no clock, no sound except her breath and her heartbeat. Hours or minutes passed, she couldn't tell. All she knew was the silence forced the truth back into her mind again and again. Evan's eyes avoiding hers, the scent that wasn't hers, the message. Layla. Her cousin had taken everything from her once before. She should have known she'd do it again. When the door finally opened, Sienna stood outside, holding a tray. "You need to hear something," Sienna whispered, leaning close. Layla visited him more than once, and not just recently. Mara's world tilted. Sienna stepped back, eyes steady. "You think you're done breaking? You're not. Not yet." Those words sank deep, settling into a place inside Mara she had never touched before. The morning they released Mara from solitary, the hallway felt colder than usual, as if the air itself wanted to push her back inside. She stepped out slowly, every muscle stiff from hours curled on concrete. The block was quieter today, too quiet. Even the usual arguments were muted, the whispers softer, the footsteps careful. Someone was watching her. She felt it before she saw her. Warden Clarice Rose stood at the far end of the hall, hands clasped behind her back, posture rigid, face unreadable. Most inmates feared her. Some hated her. Mara had avoided attracting her attention for 2 years. But now, Clarice's eyes were fixed directly on her, studying her like a puzzle she intended to solve. "Jennings," Clarice called. Her voice never rose, yet it always carried. "Walk with me." Mara hesitated. Saying no wasn't an option. She followed the warden through the corridor, feeling Sienna's gaze from behind the bars as she passed. Clarice pushed open her office door and gestured for Mara to sit. The room was immaculate, files stacked with precision, a single framed photograph on the desk turned face down, blinds half open to spill narrow stripes of light across the floor. "You had quite a night," Clarice said, taking her seat. "I've read the reports. I've also ignored several of them." Mara stiffened. "I didn't start the fight." "I know who did." Clarice's gaze remained sharp, unwavering. "But I also know what a broken woman looks like. And you look like someone trying very hard not to shatter." Mara's breath caught. She didn't know how to answer that, so she said nothing. Clarice tapped her pen lightly. "Your husband visited yesterday." It was enough to send a tremor through Mara's stomach. "He seemed distracted," Clarice continued, "and you fell apart hours later. That isn't coincidence." Mara's jaw tightened. "With all due respect, Warden, it's not your concern." Clarice leaned back slowly, as if deciding something. "I despise liars, Jennings, especially the kind who hide their sins behind perfume and apologies." Her tone faltered for the first time, a crack slipping through the hard shell. "I've seen men like him. They visit to soothe their guilt, not to offer support." Mara's pulse raced. Clarice Rowe was not a woman known for sympathy. Whatever this was, it wasn't comfort. It was recognition. Clarice stood and walked to the window, staring through the narrow slats. "You know why you were placed in solitary? Because you were seconds away from doing something irreversible. Pain makes people reckless." Mara forced her voice to stay steady. "What do you want from me?" Clarice glanced over her shoulder. "I want you to survive long enough to realize that reacting blindly is how people like your husband win. Think. Observe. Choose when to strike back, if that's the path you want." The words hit harder than the fall that sent Mara into solitary. Clarice wasn't warning her. She was offering her something. As Mara left the office, Sienna waited near the stairs, arms folded, eyes knowing. "So," she said quietly, "did she tell you what she tells all the women men break?" Mara looked past her, toward the far end of the block, where the exit lights glowed faintly. "No," Mara whispered. "She told me something worse." Sienna stepped closer. "You're not done breaking yet." Mara swallowed hard. The truth burned, but another feeling rose beneath it, dark, pulsing, dangerous. The day the riot began, the sky outside the prison turned a dull, bruised grey. The air felt heavy, the kind that warned of something violent long before it arrived. Mara sensed it in the cafeteria hours earlier, the tension in the women's voices, the twitch in restless hands, the nervous glances toward the guards. Something was winding itself tight around the block, and all it needed was the smallest spark. Sienna sat across from her, lowering her voice. "Tonight, if you're serious about getting answers, this is your only chance." Mara's fork froze halfway to her mouth. "What do you mean tonight? You think your cousin's just going to disappear from his bed?" Sienna smirked. "No. To find out the truth, you have to get out of here. And I know who can help you." Mara's chest tightened. "Escape? That's impossible." Sienna leaned in, eyes sharp. "Not tonight." Before Mara could respond, a scream erupted from the table behind them. A metal tray crashed to the floor. Two inmates lunged at each other, fists flying, chairs scraping, bodies slamming. Guards rushed in, shouting commands that dissolved instantly in the chaos. Sienna whispered, "Follow me, now." Mara hesitated only a second before pushing back her chair. She slipped between the fighting inmates, keeping low as guards swarmed. Sienna led her toward the far corner, where a service door stood slightly ajar. A guard she'd never seen before, broad shoulders, scar across his cheek, held it open. He met Mara's eyes. "You're late." Sienna handed him something small wrapped in cloth. "Payment." He pocketed it without looking. "Move." The door shut behind them, sealing the screams on the other side. They found themselves in a narrow maintenance corridor, lined with pipes and wires humming quietly. What's happening? Mara whispered. The outage, Sienna said. They're cutting power to control the riot. When the lights go, so do the cameras. You're going through the old tunnel under the laundry wing. Mara felt her breath grow shallow. Why are you helping me? Sienna stopped walking, turning to face her. Because you're not the first woman that family destroyed, and because your husband deserves to see what he created. Before Mara could ask any more questions, the lights flickered. Once, twice, and then everything went black. Alarms wailed through the walls. Sienna grabbed Mara's wrist. Go! They ran down the corridor until a metal hatch appeared in the floor. The guard opened it from below, climbing out with a flashlight clamped between his teeth. You have 5 minutes, he warned. After that, I'm gone. Mara lowered herself into the tunnel. The floor was cold, wet, and smelled of old rust. Her knees scraped against broken concrete as she crawled through the narrow space. The guard went ahead, shining the light so she could follow. Sienna stayed behind at the entrance, blocking it with her body. You'll find your answers out there, Sienna said softly. But answers cost something, Mara. Make sure you're ready to pay. Mara swallowed the tightness in her throat. Thank you. Sienna gave a small nod. Run. Mara crawled faster, heart pounding as shouts echoed through the tunnel from somewhere behind her. Chains rattled overhead. Something exploded in the distance. Dust rained down as she pushed forward, hands bleeding, breath sharp. Finally, the tunnel opened into a cramped storage pit beneath the loading dock. The guard helped her climb out and pointed to a garbage truck idling nearby. That's your ride. Mara climbed in, hiding beneath the bags, the smell choking her, but not enough to stop her. As the truck rolled toward the gates, she pressed her hand to her chest, where the slip of paper felt like a blade, waiting to twist deeper. She wasn't running. She was hunting. The garbage truck slowed only once during its long drive, long enough for Mara to slip out unseen and disappear into the alleyway behind a closed hardware store. The night pressed cold against her skin, but compared to the concrete walls she had just crawled out of, it felt almost gentle. Her clothes were filthy, her hair matted, her hands torn, but none of it mattered. She had only one thought left: Evan. She kept to the shadows as she moved through familiar streets she hadn't walked in 2 years. Every corner seemed to echo with the life she'd lost. Stores they once visited, the bus stop where Evan had waited for her after shifts, the bakery they used to argue in because he never liked her favorite pastries. She wasn't the same woman who had stood beside him back then. When she reached their old neighborhood, her heart tightened. The porch light on their house glowed warm, soft, trusting, almost mocking. The windows were partly open, curtains swaying gently with the breeze. Laughter drifted out. A woman's laugh. Layla. Mara froze beside the hedge, careful not to breathe too loudly. Layla's voice carried easily. She always spoke like the world owed her attention. I told you she'd never know, Layla was saying. You worried for nothing. Evan's voice followed, lower, breathier, too familiar. I shouldn't have gone to see her. It just felt wrong not to. You felt guilty, Layla said. You always do. That's why you need me. Mara's stomach twisted. Layla sounded proud. Mara inched closer to the window, rising just enough to see inside. Lamplight cast a warm glow across the living room. Evan sat on the couch, wearing the same jacket he'd worn to the prison. Layla curled against him, her head on his shoulder, her hand tracing lazy circles on his chest. Mara's breath hitched. She pressed her palm against her mouth to keep the sound inside. Layla lifted her head, brushing Evan's jaw with her lips, the spot where Mara had seen the smear of pink gloss. She doesn't deserve you, Layla whispered. She never did. Evan hesitated. She wasn't supposed to find out anything. She won't, Layla murmured. Not anymore. Mara's nails dug into her skin. Every word felt like another shove, another betrayal, another crack in the person she used to be. Their whispers continued, each sentence slicing deeper. I loved her once, Evan said quietly. But you make everything easy. Layla laughed softly. That's because I actually choose you. Mara clenched her jaw so hard her teeth ached. She stepped back from the window, breath shaking, vision blurring with a mix of rage and heartbreak. She could feel something shifting inside her, something cold and sharp forming where her hope used to live. She circled around the house, memorizing every possible exit. Side doors, the back fence, the basement window she knew stuck open in the winter. Old memories guided her steps, but it wasn't nostalgia. It was strategy. She watched them for hours. She watched them drink wine she used to buy. She watched Layla walk barefoot across floors Mara had scrubbed. She watched Evan kiss her cousin like he had never loved anyone else. The rage didn't explode. It hardened, solid, steady, certain. She stayed hidden until the house finally went dark. When their bedroom lights switched off, Mara's heart beat once, slowly, like a promise being carved into her bones. She whispered to the night, "You two did this." Not as a cry, as a vow. She stepped back into the shadows, already calculating her next move, already letting the darkness guide her steps. Because now, she wasn't looking for truth. She was preparing for justice. Mara waited until the first hint of dawn brushed the sky. It cast a faint glow over the house she once called home, soft enough that the world still slept under it. She stood at the back door, watching the condensation on the glass shimmer with each breath she took. Inside, Evan and Layla slept unaware that the past they buried had finally come knocking. The lock hadn't changed. Evan never bothered replacing it because he never thought she'd return. With a faint click, the door gave way. Mara stepped inside, each step slow, steady, and certain. The house smelled different. Vanilla candles, Layla's favorite. It stung her chest. She kept moving. She found Evan in the kitchen first. He stood barefoot, rubbing his eyes, a glass of water in his hand. When he saw her, the glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. "Mara," his voice cracked. How did you—" She didn't flinch. "You lied to me." He raised his hands instinctively. "Listen, I'm sorry. I didn't want any of this to happen." "You didn't want to get caught," she said. Evan swallowed hard. "It wasn't like that. Layla and it just happened. We didn't mean to hurt you." "You visited me yesterday," Mara said softly, "and you went to her afterward." Evan's face paled. "I shouldn't have. I know. But I was confused." "Confused?" Her voice tightened. "You smelled like her." His shoulders sagged. "Mara, I made mistakes, but you can't be here. You need to leave before—" A floorboard creaked at the hallway entrance. Layla. She stood in one of Evan's shirts, hair tangled, eyes widening the moment she recognized the figure in the kitchen. "Mara?" Layla whispered. "Oh my God, what are you doing here?" Mara turned slowly. "I came to hear the truth." Layla's composure cracked. She grabbed Evan's arm as if he were a shield. "We didn't mean for you to find out like this." "You didn't mean for me to find out at all," Mara said. Evan stepped in front of Layla. "Look, please, let's talk. You're angry. You have every right to be. But this isn't the way." Mara stared at him. "You think I came here to talk?" A silence, thicker than anything they'd ever shared, filled the room. Evan reached out, voice trembling. "Mara, don't do anything you'll regret." "I regret trusting both of you," she said. Layla's voice rose. "You think you're the victim? You ruined your own life!" Mara snapped toward her, and the humiliation burning through her veins ignited into something fierce. "I lost everything," she said. "You made sure of that." Layla backed away until her legs hit the counter. Evan stepped forward, panicked. "Mara, stop!" But the moment was already spiraling, pulled by months of betrayal, years of envy, and one final choice neither Evan nor Layla saw coming. The kitchen held its breath as Mara took a single step that changed the temperature of the entire room. The sirens reached the street before anyone inside the house realized they'd been called. Neighbors stood on their porches, faces pale, watching the flashing lights paint the quiet morning in violent colors. Mara stepped out through the back door as calmly as someone leaving a dinner that had simply gone cold. Her hands were stained, her breath unsteady, but her eyes held nothing. No fury, no triumph, only the hollow weight of an ending she had carried too long. Evan's shouts faded behind her. Layla's silence echoed louder. Officers approached with weapons drawn. "Stop right there! Hands where we can see them!" Mara lifted her arms slowly, the dawn light catching the cuts across her palms. She didn't run. She didn't argue. She simply stood there, letting the world finally catch her. One officer stepped closer. "Why did you do this?" Mara looked past him toward the house, toward the pieces of her life that had been rearranged without her permission. "I wasn't escaping prison," she said softly. "I was escaping them."